to talk about financial literacy and understanding the financial principles so that you don't get caught up in things like payday loans. And that's one of the major things that's been going on. And these big banks like Wachovia, Wells Fargo, Bank of America are lending millions of dollars to these individuals so they can set up these payday loan facilities and check cashing places in our community, instead of providing services like developing banks in our community, opening banks where people can actually deposit their money and maybe take a secure loan against their money in the bank.
Yeah, they're not just lending millions of dollars, they're lending millions of our dollars because they receive TARP money, in order to keep them afloat during the financial crisis. And now that money, now that they're, paying it back, with interest, they have money where they're investing into things that I think they will see as profitable for them. And unfortunately, that turns out to be these payday loans. Now, these payday loans, for those who are unaware of it, is just people taking advances on their paycheck. You have to be employed. It's normally, every 2 weeks, a 2-week loan. And it seems like it's a small amount because people are looking at amounts of maybe, $300 or,
bucks,
something of that nature. But the problem is that it puts you in a cycle of indebtedness. And people, you're never going to, it's like credit cards. You're never going to get out of the hole when you're not only borrowing against money that you haven't gotten yet, but you're also paying back interest that's astronomical. They're talking about 400%.
400%. And when you think about this, don't think that they don't have actuaries to sit down and look at this stuff, okay, before they go into this business, because they know the type of profit they're going to make. They already discussed in the article that we have information showing that the majority of people will take another loan. And by the time they paid off what the loan was, it's much more than what they actually borrowed, with interest involved in it. And so I said to myself, this is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. There's actually, I think, a study, I'm not sure if it was the University of Virginia, but there was one of the schools that, I think it was the law school actually, that actually did a study to see a parallel between the people who take out payday loans and the people who wind up filing for bankruptcy. Because it's that much of a vicious cycle where over time you're just never going to get out of it, and eventually you're just going to have to, file for bankruptcy or wind up with a problem like that. But, it's difficult because, like you said, there's a level of responsibility on our end. Where you're supposed to have some sort of fiscal responsibility, and that is what Ryan Mack, tries to teach us. But on the other hand, it's predatory. When you're preying on individuals who don't realize, that this is a vicious cycle, and it's sort of like the mortgage situation. Where they were coming after people. One person has all the knowledge because this is what they do for a living, and then the other person is going in blind and they're relying on the expertise of somebody else, and then they come in and then they prey on these individuals. So you have individuals who are constantly losing money because if you don't have $100 until Friday, and then you're going to borrow $100 that you have to pay $120 back on Friday, you're never going to get out of debt.
Right. And see, the thing that's very interesting about this is that some of the same people that was involved in this payday loan stuff were involved in the whole mortgage issue also. Wachovia and a couple of these other banks, Wells Fargo, they were in there doing some of the wrong stuff. And again, we know, looking at our community, that we've suffered more than any other community in terms of foreclosures. So when you wonder about it, the word predator does come to mind, because they're seeking to make profits in our community to our disadvantage. They're not providing a service. They are providing a disservice to our community. And even after being exposed in what they're doing, they're still continually behind front organizations, continually doing it.
Yeah, I mean, they referred to it like undercover, transactions, only because these banks are not only lending money to these payday institutions, which are normally like little storefront type things, but they've actually promised money to certain organizations before they even start. Millions of dollars before they even set up their storefronts. That's how much of a lucrative business they know it is. That's why I'm saying, unfortunately, we're in a capitalistic society without with very little moral integrity. So they're not looking to just make money. They're looking to make money at any cost. And so you have individuals who, if they see something that is profitable, they're going to invest in it, and that's what the banks are doing. And they're seeing this particular aspect as a profitable undertaking. And that's where I think it is very important that people like Ryan Mack and other people inform the general population that the banks are looking out for themselves. Now you have to start looking out for yourselves and recognize the connection.
And not even the banks, but Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, a lot of these mortgages that went out, it came from Wall Street, Wall Street's dirty little secret. And also the same thing with what's going on with these payday loans and stuff. Wall Street is deeply involved, and it seems like deeply involved in minding your destruction, or destructive behavior, I should say. And so we need to start looking at this. We need to start thinking about this stuff very seriously, because I don't know anybody that can afford to pay 400% on a loan.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, I don't know, they should have classes and, you know, things like this in the school
Maybe
system.
They should pass a law against usury, is what it's called.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, unfortunately, we're in a capitalistic society, and anything that can make a buck is going to be lucrative, right, as we've seen with the banks and the overdraft charges and all these other things, where it doesn't matter how detrimental it is to one group, they're
right,
still going to do it. Not to glaze over the racial issue, because it is very important, and most people are going to say, well, it's not racial, the banks aren't, you know, racist or anything, and maybe they're not. But the issue is that the people who are disenfranchised, who are, you know, have very little money in their communities, are the ones who are going to use this service. And they're the ones who are going to wind up, because if you have a lot of money, or you're a Wall Street banker, or whatever the case is, you don't need to use this service, because you're making enough money where it's not even necessary for you. So the people who can least afford to pay these astronomical interest rates are the ones who are preyed on a regular basis.
Yeah, and besides the whole issue of having to go to a check cashing place to do all of this crap in the first place, which is even more ridiculous when we should have community banks where we can lend money. Again, I'll say it one more time, and I know you've watched the show over the last 12 years and be like, I am so tired of hearing about George Bailey. Well, I love talking about George Bailey and the savings and loan and how people in the community helped each other out.